Things have gotten really weird since we've gotten here.
I didn't want to go in the first place.
We are talking Insidious Inferno, directed and written by Calvin McCarthy. I've actually reviewed a few movies from McCarthy over the years, and this is the latest. So, what's this movie about? Now, I have to say before we get into this is kind of an art house horror film. And I'll be quite upfront and I'll say I am somewhat biased because I don't like art house films. So I'm going into this review with an admitted bias because I don't really like this kind of subgenre of movies. I never really have. I find them hard to engage with. So I will preface this review saying I am sort of going into this with somewhat of a bias. I will try and be as fair as I can, but there is that. So what's the story about? Well, it focuses on this kind of adult couple who go to this kind of house in the woods that has been left to the wife by her recently deceased father. And they just want to kind of flip it and kind of do some repairs and kind of move it on. But this house appears to be on one of the gates of hell. And obviously they don't know that, and there is various kind of supernatural things that are kind of happening, especially in regards to affecting the wife, to essentially go ahead with opening these kind of gates. Now the husband is also kind of seeing things. He's seeing this kind of strange blonde woman who appears to be blind and is apparently communicating with the dead, and she's kind of warning them to kind of get out of there, basically, and it's kind of affecting the wife. You know, the couple are already somewhat kind of at odds with each other because of their past lives and things like this. So their relationship is somewhat fractious, to say the least. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So that's the kind of the basic plot premise there. This couple goes to this house and it happens to be on one of the gates of hell. There you go. That is the basic premise. But what is the meat on the bones is this kind of this art house aesthetic, which we'll come on to again. Let's talk about what I did like. I mean, those of you who like kind of the art house aesthetic, I think you may get on with this. I mean, I don't even know if it's necessarily trying to be all that arty, to be honest. It just kind of appears that way, but it certainly is somewhat kind of psychedelic, lots of kind of hallucinations and kind of trippy kind of visuals, you know, filters on the camera, weird camera movements, all that sort of stuff. You know, it's very much in that wheelhouse of an art house horror. So if you are a fan of that, then, and you're interested in checking out a lower budget kind of one, a B-movie art house horror, if you like, then this might appeal to you. Outside of that, what can I say that I thought did okay in this film? Well, I think the VFX aren't bad, for a start. One of the kind of hallucinations, or are they hallucinations, are they real? One of the things we see are these kind of like a demon, zombie things that look like kind of like moss men, is the best way I would kind of describe it. They're quite kind of strikingly different to what you kind of see in the normal kind of horror films, so that makes them pretty interesting to look at, I have to say. They're not on screen a hell of a lot, to be honest with you. They don't do loads, but they're interesting visually. But there are, outside of that, also some interesting visual elements to this. The woman who's this kind of blind woman who appears to be a sort of connection with a kind of supernatural force. She has some pretty interesting scenes, and I thought her character was probably the most interesting, to be honest. And you know, you're not quite sure who she is, or you know, who she's kind of like, you know, working for, so to speak. But I found her character pretty interesting, and I thought they presented her pretty well. I think the acting is reasonably solid. There's one character who seems weirdly out of place, but actually there's probably two characters that seem weird, and they're both ginger blokes. Don't know what it is about these ginger blokes, but there you go. So yeah, but the acting is, I think, is okay. I think the general kind of like cinematography and that is all competently kind of put together here. And I think the basic story, like I said, the bones of the story are relatively kind of simply laid out, but it's just the kind of like what's the flesh on the bones, what's happening around that story is, I just, I didn't really get it, to be honest. And that brings me into what I didn't like. I didn't really get it. I mean, the story, like I've said, the basic premise of the story, you can get, I personally got, could grasp, but all this kind of like flailing around and sort of seemingly like repeating certain scenes and sort of like labouring the point on certain things and just lots of kind of like arty stuff. It was just it just lost me as a viewer. Like I've said, I do have a predisposition where I'm not really interested in this type of film, to be brutally honest. So I will say that. But to me, I like a strong, cohesive narrative. You can have twists and turns in this narrative and you can kind of go in unexpected directions. But I feel it should bring you along, that's the viewer, on the ride. And to me, this didn't. I just thought, what am I watching? What am I watching? I don't know. I just don't understand what these people are doing. And I have to say, the characters, though I think they're reasonably well portrayed, they're kind of unlikable. I didn't like this couple. I thought they seemed like unlikable, kind of arrogant and sort of rude people generally, even before this kind of like craziness kind of started. I didn't really understand why the guy is seeing supernatural stuff if the supernatural stuff is connected to the house and therefore the wife's kind of side of the family. And then the kind of, like I've said, the more interesting visual side of stuff, it just didn't really fit to me in the story. It just kind of like, they're just there to have some interesting visuals, but I didn't really feel they played much of a part on it. And it's maybe a little long, to be honest, for what I think was a relatively threadbare story that stretched out with lots of kind of like artistic flourishes that seemingly just kind of like meandered around and didn't really need to be as extended or or as kind of flowery or whatever as it turns out to be on screen. So I found this movie quite hard to sit through in some ways. Like I've said, this is the film that really I was never gonna be 100% on board with anyway, because I'm just not a fan of the Arthouse movie style of filmmaking. So bear that in mind. But from what I can see, I found it a little bit incomprehensible and incoherent, to be honest. I'll give it a 4 out of 10 because I do feel there are some elements here that I think are done well within the movie, but it's just a hard movie for really to kind of to get on board with and to to kind of like go on that journey with. But if you are a fan of the Arthouse A24 style movies, then you might like this better than I will. So bear that in mind. So for me, it's a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.